Gujarat Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Grow business. Transform Gujarat.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Prashant. I'm your host for this panel discussion. We have a lineup of some very impressive speakers here coming from different walks of the industry and policy making. And I would like to start with some small anecdotes. In the industry, we like these acronyms. So a few decades ago, it was CSR. Then it became SDG. And now it is ESG. But there's a fundamental difference between CSR and SDG. So I'm reminded of Majru Sultanpuri, who wrote कि मैं अकेला ही चला था जानिबे मंजिल मगर लोग साथ आते गए और कारवां बढ़ता गया. Ladies and gentlemen, that was CSR. ESG cannot work like that because Majru Sultanpuri Sher was a bit of a fatalistic disposition on the reality of the world. It was about ke sara sara. That is not how ESG works. I remember advising a large luxury chain client in the UK, and we were talking about what should be the tenure of their general managers and directors of finance and CFO at different facilities. And it turned out that if you leave general management role with one person for more than 3 years, it becomes suboptimal. In other words, the top management has to recycle itself in 3 years. It was slightly larger for the directors of finance, perhaps 4 to 5 years. And that is where Mark Carney's statement comes in, and he talks about the tragedy of the horizons. That managers and businesses are there to serve their short-term goals. So if you end up becoming the person who is at the helm of a business, your prime objective is to maximize the outcome for next 3 to 5 years. But the global problems that we are dealing with goes far, far beyond that. The climate change will happen perhaps 3 decades later. So what do? We cannot continue to adopt the same model as we adopted for CSR. We have to come together. And that is where Sandeep Bhai talked about all of us coming together. Jakshay talked about building an ecosystem. And that is why Samir Bhai had to organize this conference here today so that we all can come together. We cannot do it alone. So on that note, Ratnesh, if I could start with you. Given Gujarat's significant progress in renewable energy, what do you see as the biggest challenge in scaling sustainability efforts further in our state?
Thank you, Prashant, and thank you for that share from Majru Sultanpuri ji. Well, first of all, a very warm welcome to all of you to this very, very significant dialogue that is being facilitated by the Gujarat Chamber. I mean, it's very timely and it's very relevant and it's very critical. And I represent a global body of corporates. So you mentioned SDGs, you mentioned ESG, but I would like to add the MDGs also, which were very, very objective, and only 8 of them you could measure and you could be done with it. However, as the world community realized that the reality is more complicated, more interrelated, and that excellent introduction of ESG in the opening session. So I would like to remind all of you that E, S, and G are not 3 separate alphabets. They are all interrelated. What we do with the environment, what we do with our society, while we produce wealth and while we pursue profits, and how we conduct ourselves within factory premises. What are the rules? What are the processes? What are the non-negotiables that we implement And it includes anti-corruption, bribery, and all other governance ethics, integrity, and all other, how we treat our workers, how we, are we working towards a living wage than a minimum wage. So all these standards that we beholden ourselves. And this is what UN Global Compact represents globally. We are present in 62 countries, and from where we see this whole progress, Gujarat is at a very, very, very high spot, in the sense that I would like to share something which I came across recently, that wind energy, the first wind turbine project, was in this state in as early as 1986. And Mandavia, I think that was the name of the Mandavi. So what happened is that led to the policy which informed the whole national discourse on wind energy. And right now we are at a very, very high. So what Gujarat, another episode I would like to remind you, when we were, I used to work for UNDP then, UN Development Program, and we were supporting all the sub-national governments. And within that, Gujarat, we had come, and the whole officials were there in the secretariat in Gandhinagar, and they had mapped out everything, where we have data, where we do not have data, what we need to do. So Gujarat, the government is very proactive, and the way Gujarat Chamber of Commerce presented itself, you have a special task force on ESG. So I think you are there. The only thing which we need to evolve together, a common understanding that between now and 2047, or between now and 2070, there is no respite. There is no falling back. There is no place for complacency. It's a battle that we have to fight and win every day. And I'm so happy that this is a net zero event. A lot of care has been taken. So that same attitude has to be done with all that we do. And there are huge and complex challenges. As Prashant wants me to enumerate them, we are all very well aware of. Where is the land for all the massive solar and wind turbines? When we juxtapose demands, various demands of agriculture, of urbanization, the intermittent nature of this renewable energy, how do we design better and greater grids, smart grids, which can take care of this intermittent nature of this renewable energy? How do we make the world a safer place, a more inclusive place? So all this relentless pursuit of sustainability, of equality, of thinking in an inclusive manner, and Global Compact is here to support. We already have 25 members from Gujarat, all the leading corporates who are our members, and with them we are trying to craft this story of incremental but firm progress towards a more equitable, a more environmentally sustainable, and a well-governed industrial and manufacturing and enterprise of Gujarat. So, yeah, thank you.
Ratnesh. Thank you for highlighting the equity part of sustainability and cautioning us that sustainability is not just about environment and social. The S word is a huge component to it. And it goes back to us coming together. We cannot solve it alone. We have to come together. And thank you, Samir Bhai, for putting this group together so that we can take collective efforts. Arun, I'll shift to you. Adani Group has made significant investments in renewable energy. But as we are, emphasizing that we cannot do it alone. So what role do large corporations play in accelerating Gujarat's transition into net zero?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I will actually pick up on the Indian context, which is different from the global context. And India actually is leading, in spite of lecturing from the West. And Gujarat is leading in India, and it has to lead. That's the role it has to play. So let's look at the Indian context. Its priorities are in this order. Energy security is its top priority. It spends some $200 billion a year in energy imports. It's a debilitating yoke on its economy. The second priority is air quality in its cities. It's a public health disaster. Life expectancy, average life expectancy in Delhi is significantly lower because of air quality. And air quality is not the same as greenhouse gas emissions. Greenhouse gas emission is a global problem. You pump greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, and eventually it leads to global warming. It is a local problem. And air quality has to be focused. And of course, renewables and green hydrogen will play a role. And I'll come to a grand challenge for Gujarat, where it has to lead, and it needs to lead in this area. The third priority is decarbonization. And India has given itself a goal of 2070, but it can be done much faster. And Gujarat has to have a more ambitious goal. That's what I will urge. In Adani Group, other than 2 companies, most of our other companies have already signed up for a net zero SBTi target of 2050 or earlier. The ports business has signed a target for 2040. It can be done. And the fourth priority, which no one would have dreamt of, is India is on the verge of becoming an exporter for the first time in its history of clean energy. And I'll pick that when we discuss green hydrogen and how it can be done. So let me say how India has actually done it. India is on track to deliver 500 gigawatt of non-fossil capacity by 2030. July of last year, it had exceeded 200 gigawatt. But it is not just that. And Gujarat is one of the leaders in this space. I was at New York Climate Week, and Mr. Haider was in the audience. And what you have to understand that India has gone beyond allocating land for renewables. It opened to the private sector the renewable farms, and you have seen what has happened. It also opened interstate transmission lines to the private sector, and when it allocated land, it also put bids for transmission line connecting to the single Indian grid. So in Khavda, even before a single electron was fired, the connectivity to the grid was ready. We didn't lose a single electron. In the US, there are hundreds of gigawatt, in Europe, hundreds of gigawatt of renewable energy generation capacity waiting to be connected to the grid. So I think the West just needs to stop lecturing India and learn from it. But India has more to do, and this is where Gujarat comes in. The Supreme Court has also ordered that involve the private sector in intra-state transmission lines, and this is being considered. Some states have already done it. Gujarat needs to do there because that's where the decarbonization will happen. Now, let us come to the air quality issue. I was very pleased when, the speakers talked about air quality and how Ahmedabad has to go. There is a serious problem. I live in Brisbane. I checked the AQI in Brisbane. It's around 10 to 15 right now. Okay. Brisbane is going to host the 2032 Olympics. It'll probably be one of the cleanest air Olympics in history. Remember Beijing Olympics? It was a disaster, but China was able to undertake in 2-3 years in a military-style fashion to make air breathable for the Beijing Olympics. Maybe 15 is too strict a target. So I looked at the AQI in London, where the Olympics was also held. 50, good enough. Why not Gujarat set a target for 2036 that Ahmedabad AQI will be 50? And it will be a proud host of the Olympics. Nothing like a grand challenge to get the juices flowing, the MSMEs contributing, and the renewables and the green hydrogen area where Gujarat already has a leadership will be able to take it to the next level. So what I'm saying is, India is leading. Let not anyone fool you and lecture you on ESG. And Gujarat has to lead India.
Thank you, Arun. Nirav, let's pick on where Arun passed the baton about air quality and cleaner energy. As a renewable energy company, what innovations or business models you think are helping accelerate the adoption of clean energy in Gujarat?
Thank you for having me. A warm welcome to everyone. And I'm a native of Ahmedabad, so always a pleasure to be back here. I grew up here, but moved out for studies and work. But first of all, let me congratulate the organizers of this event. Really well put together. Even the attention to detail in terms of the boxes of water, the recyclable name tags, the elephant poop diaries, class act. Thank you guys. Well done. Very well done. Any event where AQI is a topic is very near to my heart, and I'll tell you why. I flew in from Delhi last night, which is where I live. For the first time in 6 months, the AQI in Delhi yesterday was below 100. For the first time in 6 months. For the first time in 6 months, I went outside for a run. Now, this is the state of our nation's capital. This is a huge problem. In my house alone, there are 6 purifiers running 24/7, in my office as well. So clearly the need of the hour is for us to come together collectively and do something. I run a company called Blue Pine Energy. We build and operate renewable energy plants all over India. Today we're in 10 states. Gujarat remains our largest exposure to date. And there's a reason for that. Gujarat is cutting edge in terms of industry, in terms of growth, in terms of policy, in terms of regulation, in terms of credit history, payment securities, etc., etc. I could go on, but clearly Gujarat is the leading state today where everybody wants to do business. My investors who are based in the UK have very clear goals on ESG, and which is why ESG is an integral part of everything that we do. Building power plants is only part of our job, but making sure that we integrate the larger communities in which we build those power plants. We ensure that we build those power plants and generate that clean energy in adherence not just to the laws of the land, but also in sync with the local communities, upskilling them, giving them employment opportunities, ensuring that we leave that place when we finish operation of that power plant in, say, 30, these are 30-year assets, by the way. So when we finish the operation of these 30-year assets, we leave that place a better place than we were when we first started building it. So that is core to us. To the question itself of what kind of innovative models are there, and I think Ratnesh mentioned the first wind turbine happened 25 years ago in Gujarat. Today, and this is something that I want to talk about, is I saw the picture of the Gir lion that Jakshay was referring to in that acronym PRIDE. Today we're building India's first wind farm very close to that Gir forest. And how are we building it? We're making sure that we've taken all the approvals, requisite approvals from forest zones, from forest departments. We're making sure that we're building that wind farm. And it's a large wind farm. From the easternmost wind turbine to the westernmost wind turbine is a 60-kilometer distance. So this is a massive swath of land that we're building on. But we're ensuring that everything that we do in terms of setting up our camps for our people, our offices, our substations, the transmission lines that we run, to the Gujarat grid, the internal transmission lines that we run to connect the turbines to each other, they're all done with a sustainable goal in mind. This is absolutely what needs to be done as we go, because renewable energy, as was mentioned before, is the need of the hour. 500 gigawatts by 2030 is the goal. Gujarat is going to be 100 gigawatts of that. 20% of the national goal is going to be Gujarat. And how are we going to get there? There's going to have to be new models that come in. And today, renewable energy is not just when the sun shines during the day or when the wind blows in the evening. It has to be 24/7. Our country is a night-peaking country, which means that the predominant load happens at night time, after the sun is set. How do we achieve meeting that load? By ensuring that the plants that we build are well integrated with a battery storage system or some storage mechanism to ensure that we harness the energy from the day, from the evening, and are able to supply those peaking loads that the industries want now at night. Today we're serving 2 data centers in the state of Maharashtra, and those are 24/7 operations. They have a peak load 24/7. So how do you sustain that operation at night? You have to be able to build and integrate storage, large-scale storage, along with sun and wind to be able to serve that load. And this is what innovation is.
Right. So, I mean, solar would only harvest energy during daytime, but our peak loads are in the nighttime. You know, it's a very interesting way of looking at the renewable energy challenge. And wind turbines only tend to be in rural areas, right? So, perhaps we need innovation to also bring some sort of wind energy into urban space so that, you know, real estate developers, in addition to solar, could also gain some carbon credits, as one of the upcoming sessions would talk about. Abhishek, we are very keen at hearing from you. So Gujarat contributes around 7% of India's GDP, and we emit around 8% of carbon, national carbon emission. And but we lead on many fronts. If I'm not wrong, in the textile sector, we contribute around 23% of the national output. And firms like yours have been leading exporters as well. How is Arvind Limited integrating sustainability into its operations, and what challenges do industries face in adopting green practices, given the fact that by design, the challenge of sustainability is higher in certain industries like yours?
Certainly. Thanks, Prashant bhai, and thanks, audience, for patiently hearing us. I'm Abhishek Bansal, leading sustainability at Arvind Limited. Arvind is one of India's largest manufacturer and exporters of textiles. And textile industry globally is about $2 trillion and about 2% of the global GDP, one of the largest sort of industrialized sector. And textile production, however easy it may seem, there's a lot of, it's very resource intensive. When you look at energy, water, chemicals, or anything, any resources that comes to mind. And that's why there's been a lot of focus, especially globally, being a consumer-facing industry, to reduce all the impacts and create also positive impact at the same time. At Arvind, we've taken a lot of steps which are in line with what local needs are and what global needs are. And our major challenge first was to shift our entire production to recycled water. So we've been working on water recycling since early 2000s. And by 2020, we had stopped using any fresh water for the production needs. And we completely shifted to recycle water. All units are zero liquid discharge. And we buy sewage from Ahmedabad and Gandhinagar municipality, treat it and use it in the process to make up for the water losses. So to give you an idea of the scale, we recycle more than 25 million liters of water every day, and more than 7 billion liters annually. And imagine if that was coming from fresh water, with the pressure on, extreme pressure on freshwater resources due to our population and agriculture. Our next big area of work was agriculture itself, because almost 70% of the raw material is cotton, which comes from agriculture, and is also highly intensive crop because of being a cash crop. And that's where we have been, again, working since 2007, when we started our first organic farming initiatives. And till about last year, we've reached more than 95,000 farmers across Gujarat and Maharashtra, where we help farmers to grow cotton more sustainably and follow different global standards as per the branding requirements. And along with the agriculture, of course, we help save much more fresh water in agriculture than our total consumption is. Our current big area of work is renewable energy. So again, we started working on it in 2015 when we put up first megawatt scale solar plant. And our current capacities, we have reached 66 megawatt of solar and wind. And our emissions have come down from more than 1 million ton in 2015 to about 600,000 tons right now. And our target is to bring it under 100,000 tons by 2030. So there's a lot of work on, not only on renewable power, we are working very aggressively on bioenergy, because our energy needs are equally split across power and heat. And for heat, we are transitioning every unit from coal to agriculture waste or other bio-based residues. And we set up our own supply chain to collect and harvest the agriculture waste, and also do various processes on that to make it suitable for our use. So these are three key areas that we are working on, and at our end, Arvind is rated as #1 in India and #6 globally as per S&P 500 ESG ratings. So we've made a lot of progress, and as we heard earlier, India is taking a lead when it comes to sustainable textiles, and it has become one of the key business factors. So sustainability is not only, of course, there are sustainability goals on its own, but it is helping drive business for us, because global brands who have big sustainability ambition, they are pushing more and more business to the supply chains which are more sustainable, more traceable, and so on. Thank you.
Yeah, Abhishek, let me build on what you were saying. The clock is ticking, so I'll have another round of questions for all the panelists for your quick responses. In terms of circular economy, obviously this is more challenging for some industry than others, but industries like yourselves where this has been achieved to some extent, what can other industries learn from it in terms of what the textile industry is doing in addressing environmental challenge? Any thoughts on that? So you talked about 3 different areas in which Arvind is working. Which are these areas you think that other industries also could learn from?
I think 2 areas which comes to mind, which are quite sort of neutral to the type of industry. One, of course, the water itself. So I think from in last 20 years, water treatment technologies have advanced so much that now it is practically possible to recycle any type of wastewater. Only challenge there perhaps is the mispricing of water. So water as a resource is practically free or not priced efficiently to drive water recycling. But in certain geographies within India, for example, if you see Bangalore or Karnataka, parts of Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, where water is priced more than 150 rupees per meter cube, it makes sense to, as a business sense as well. But water is, I think, something which every industry should focus on and is easy to tackle. Second key area is bioenergy, because if we look at India is still in large parts based on agriculture. We generate more than 500 million tons of biomass every year. And our coal consumption, if you see, is in the range of 600 to 650 million tons. So if we could harvest and work on biomass as a mission, it has potential to sort of almost offset 70-80% of our coal requirements. And it's practically a free source of energy, which is leading to all sort of AQI problems. Biomass is burned practically everywhere. In Delhi, it causes unique challenge due to the topography. But if you see in Gujarat or south of India, it's set to fire everywhere. So
correct.
these
So both solid waste and liquid waste is a major problem with the textile industry. And I guess this is also where all industries could join hands. You know, the way you are addressing those challenges, if there is some knowledge transfer and spill over to other industries, that will be very helpful. Ratnesh, that brings me to you. Help us. You have seen global best practices all over the world. Quickly, what could Gujarat do to become greener?
Well, Gujarat is already there in terms of right policy framework ahead of the national kind of cycle, because I did some research before coming here. So for hydrogen, for wind, for everything, there is a comprehensive policy framework, and the PPP models also are working reasonably well. Of course, there's always a scope for improvement. And because of this good coordination, you are able to achieve a lot. And already, 20% of the national target. In terms of landmass, I think you are much less. And still you have taken this ambitious task upon yourself and are confident of achieving it. So something is working very, very right. And I would really agree with my fellow panelists from Adani that we don't need lectures from outside or the West. And in fact, UN Global Compact is what Arvind representative was saying here. So industries leading and who have achieved it, leading the way for others who are on the fence, thinking about it, not so convinced about the financials and other things. So that is what we do in terms of the 500 plus member base that we have. We constantly work on these issues, and Gujarat also is part of our focus area where the whole learning, peer group learning experience is what we highlight. Now, in terms of what Gujarat should do, I would be unfair if I'll say it's all perfect hunky-dory. There are immense challenges. And how the industry leaders or a few leading industries, how they take the MSME along, their entire supply chain, what is in it for them, what are the price and other bargaining issues in terms of whether I do these additional expenditure in my plant and machinery or any other mitigating setup, how do I get reimbursed? So all those things. Then it comes to the workers, it comes to the communities, whether the transition is just. All of you highlighted it in your interventions, but that has to be at the center, because at the end of the day, the S part is going to determine the success. And finally, I would like to say that government and private need to have a harmonious and a long-term perspective so that the investments being made today do not become unremunerative due to change or adaptation in new technology. So it should be a PPP in the truest sense with the community at the center. That would be my
So you
mantra.
are pointing towards public-private partnership. I think complacence is always dangerous. If we want to stay leaders, it's always good to adopt best practices from wherever we can. But I hear you that we need indigenous interventions. We don't need to replicate what is being done elsewhere because it may simply not work here. But the very motivation to, improve AQI or go that ESG path, I think is something that we could continue to learn from best practices across the globe. Nirav, you are in a business where the output is very volatile. The supply can be volatile, and the prices can also be quite volatile. I assume that your solution is to get that hybrid renewable energy. Do you think this is replicable all over India? Because in Gujarat, we always have sunshine, and in certain parts, we always have the wind, right? What has been your experience with this hybrid strategy so far?
Let me pick up on two things. First, I think the one where my panelists talked about water. And I firmly believe that the next wars in the world, all over the world, will be around water. Water is a really scarce resource, and I think we're already facing that. As for a lot of our plants to operate them, we need to clean them on a very regular basis to ensure that the generation is maximized during the daylight hours. And for cleaning, water is the only resource. So to make sure that sustainability becomes a mantra and becomes part of your operations, we're moving all our plants from wet water-based cleaning to robotic solutions. And I think a lot of renewable energy companies are doing that because we are finding that the quality of water is either not good or not enough to be able to generate the amounts of green power that we need to supply the load that the industries and the governments require. So that was the first thing I wanted to say. The second thing I want to say is sustainability is not just about our operations, but it's also about greening the supply chain. And what does that mean? That means that everyone upstream of us, from the fasteners and the cables that we use, from the wires and the poles that we use to build our plants, for the solar panels, the modules, the cells, the wind turbines, the blades, the steel towers, each one of those industries has to undergo a greening process as well. Only then will the energy that we generate from our renewable plants be truly green. Otherwise, it's greenwashing. So to the question of, in the supply chain, how do we manage that? So in the Indian supply chain is very robust, is very versatile. So for example, up until some years ago, we used to import modules from China and build our solar plants. What has happened now is that we now import only the cells and get them converted into modules in India, which means that there is a robust and developing ecosystem of module suppliers in India that is growing by the day. And the goal is to achieve that vision of 500 gigawatts by 2030. We'll get there. Most of our equipment,
so
our
focus
generation
on building indigenous capacity for improving the supply chain.
Right.
Arun, in the interest of time, I'll move
Sure.
to you. The last question. Let's talk about carbon credits markets. With India expanding its carbon credits markets, how can businesses in Gujarat leverage this for both being compliant and financial gains? I assume that we are past the motivation of compliance and financial gains. The monster of AQI is already in front of us. We have to make genuine efforts. How could we move ahead in this direction?
So the whole business of carbon credits is evolving. Right now, there are business models using Vera and Gold Standard where you can plant trees, get it certified, and monetize it. Indian government is itself coming up with the Green Credits Program, a carbon market, and we expect the regulatory framework to become clear. But there is a global push also. You might have heard of Article 6. Basically, what it tries to do is $1 spent in Japan for decarbonization doesn't go the same distance as $1 spent in India. Okay? So what the world is trying to do is sometimes it might be difficult for developed economies to get the same amount of carbon reduction because ultimately it is a global problem. So why not let that investment happen in India, but those countries are able to take the credits to meet their target. And I do not want to venture the interplay between Article 6, India's carbon market, and the current voluntary carbon market. And we all want a fungible international, where a rupee can be traded with $1 and $1 can be traded with a pound or a euro, is something like that will emerge. But I want to pick up on the subject of MSMEs. When you look at decarbonization, scope 1, just electrify, use some biofuels where it's feasible. Otherwise, the last mile is going to be green hydrogen in case of India, because carbon capture and sequestration isn't going to work in India. We'll have to send it to Saudi Arabia. Scope 2, source renewables, or invest in captive renewable capacity. What do we do with scope 3? Because scope 3 is where also the MSMEs come into play. Now, scope 3 is your upstream emission, the people who supply to you, your downstream emission, the people who buy products from you, and some of your own emissions in terms of you're a consulting company or an IT company, you buy carbon credits to decarbonize their, their air travel, and then they try to put themselves on the back. That's trivial. No one cares about it, okay? It is how does heavy industry do? So this is where the game will only happen when we create a business model that works. So if the consumers are prepared to pay a premium for low carbon products, then we can provide a premium to our suppliers to reduce their carbon footprint. And we can also give a discount to our customers if they do low carbon methods of using it. So let me give you an example. When we acquired Holcim cement assets, and I'm taking the most difficult example, everything we can see a pathway. Holcim had decided to become net zero by 2050. Hardly any cement company has done that. But they had full intention to sell their Indian assets, okay, in doing so. In Europe, there are enough salt caverns, they will capture the carbon dioxide, store it, so they can get to net zero. When we got the assets, we would have been absolutely justified in abandoning SBTi 2050 target. But we said, if the Adani Group cannot do it, and this is a Gujarat success story, if Adani Group cannot do it, no one else can do it. So we stuck with the target. What have we done? The cement business has decided to invest in gigawatt of renewable captive capacity. We will do that. But no matter how hard you try, some level of carbon capture will be required in cement. But what do you do with that carbon? Are you going to liquefy it, put it on a ship, and then sell it, give it to Saudi Arabia and pay rent for storage? The business model doesn't work. So this is where green hydrogen comes into play. So if you combine that carbon dioxide with green hydrogen, you make methanol. Now this is where the customers come in. If that methanol is bought by someone to use as a transportation fuel, then the carbon dioxide goes back into the atmosphere. They don't get a discount. Okay? But if that methanol is used to make PVC, which is a building material, which stores the carbon dioxide for 100 years, that you have effectively stored the carbon dioxide, you give them a discount. And that's how this is going to work. So what we need is a trust architecture where every SME is able to record their scope 1 and scope 2. They don't need to do their scope 3 because my scope 3 is someone else's scope 1 and scope 2. So if everyone focused on their scope 1, scope 2, everyone's scope 3 will be addressed. And we need a trust architecture. India can do a blockchain where every SME is able to record their scope 1, scope 2, and with that, the big corporates will be able to reward them as the market develops.
A lot of very interesting ideas here. All the way from installing blockchain to record scope 1 and scope 3 records. But I'm fascinated by the example you gave about fungibility of carbon credits. I think we are at very early stages, but this is also an academic question that, do we adjust it with purchasing power parity? Ladies and gentlemen, we have to conclude our session here right now. The clock has stopped. We are in the negative zone already. But before we disperse, we won't get an access to such an august group of panelists here. So allow me to have a brief Q&A session. If any one of you would have any questions for any of the panelists here, you're welcome.
I actually have.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
We're a little short on time, but we do have a couple of questions that have come in. What strategies can be implemented to effectively integrate and empower universities and institutions beyond national and international renown to contribute meaningfully to sustainability initiatives? Okay, that's the first question. The second question is, Shanghai has blue skies again. How and when will Delhi ever have the same? Is that possible? Anyone brave enough to take that?
Start with the China question, gentlemen.
I'll probably pick up on both the questions. Let's just make the problem simple, the China problem. Let's just make the problem. 2036 will be the Olympics in Ahmedabad. We've got more than a decade, okay? Let's set up a target. Let's actually figure out an incremental progress in AQI average AQI annually going forward. What are the technologies that are there that we need to do? Where are the emissions that will happen? Someone actually talked about biomass burning. The biggest problem in India is we waste our biomass, okay? Sometimes we make ethanol for transportation that needs to basically move to battery electric vehicles. The only sector where biomass is the only solution is aviation, sustainable aviation fuel. And they can outpay any other sector. So if we had a national and a statewide policy that our biomass will be used for sustainable aviation fuel, then suddenly the premium to the farmer who is burning it or a sugarcane mill that is using the bagasse to generate electricity goes away. And this is the policy setting that needs to happen. And so these are the things by which you incrementally work towards 2010. The university question is interesting. I used to be a deputy vice chancellor of a university for 16 years. And I worked with the Times Higher Education in actually coming up with the impact rankings. Now, aligning universities, for Indian universities to look at those impact rankings. I know there is no Indian university in the Shanghai Jiaotong top 500. Okay, it'll take time, there are issues there. But impact rankings are helpful because universities compete. How do universities, human capital, their research and innovation, their community engagement is going to impact the sustainable development goals? And if universities start competing on it, it will influence the kind of courses they develop. And I was very pleased to see that, that there is a course now on sustainability. I'm advising IIT Kanpur in their Masters of AI and Sustainability course. I think more and more needs to happen. So let us create that, let the Indian universities compete on the impact rankings so far as SDGs are concerned, and then suddenly things will actually happen.
Yeah. Nirav, did you?
More. I think on the second question, universities, I think if you ask me if there's one single factor that could lead us to delay the achievement of our net zero goals, it's the availability of skilled labor. With the amount of construction in the renewable energy space happening all over India, this is becoming a real bottleneck. And we and many others in our space are trying to partner very actively with universities, colleges, and we're not just talking about engineers. We are talking about craftsmen, electricians, installers. I mean, all those tradespeople who are needed to run these plants, to build these plants. That's the need of the hour. So a closer integration with universities and educational institutions at all levels in the chain is what's required.
One line. So one of our members, Renew, which is in the same space as you, so they have done an arrangement with the ISM Dhanbad. So all the people who are working in the, especially women who are working in the coal mines, they are being trained in the solar thing. So these are the steps which are required, and industry only has to do it, because as you rightly said, where do you get the manpower to actually man these things? And I mean person power, sorry. So that is what is the need of the hour, and many industry are actually taking those initiatives in partnership with the universities.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much.
Gujarat Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Grow business. Transform Gujarat.